Welcome to our deep dive, into the world of atomic habits. This is James Clear's book, and we'll be looking at how those tiny changes can lead to big results.
Yeah.
But first,
Over time.
over time, right? It all starts with a story,
Yeah, big one.
a pretty intense one.
Yeah.
James Clear himself,
Ah,
he went through this near fatal accident when he was in high school.
yeah.
Imagine a baseball bat to the face,
Yeah.
multiple seizures,
Hard to fathom the severity of
a helicopter ride,
those injuries. A detached eyeball, facial fractures,
even a medically induced coma.
loss of smell, double vision, and months of relearning even basic movements.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that could completely derail someone's life.
Absolutely.
But Clear was determined to recover.
Uh-huh.
And this is where I think the seeds of atomic habits were planted.
Yeah.
While he was rebuilding his life at Denison University, Clear started forming simple habits. Things like getting good sleep
Right?
and a tidy room. You know, they might seem kind of insignificant amidst the chaos of college life,
Copley.
but they laid the foundation for something bigger.
And what's fascinating here is this experience, it sparked Clear's interest in the power of habits.
Yeah.
He realized it wasn't about massive overnight changes.
Right.
It was those small, consistent actions that compounded over time.
Yeah.
And that brings us to a concept Clear explores in the book called the aggregation of marginal gains.
Okay, I've heard that phrase before. Isn't that the strategy that was used by Sir Dave Brailsford, the
Yes,
coach who led the British cycling team to dominate at the Olympics
that's right.
and the Tour de France?
Brailsford had this radical idea to break down every aspect of cycling performance,
Okay.
from the bike itself to the rider's sleep habits, and aim to improve each element by just 1%.
Wow.
Now, 1% might seem insignificant,
Right.
but it's that compounding effect that makes it so powerful. Think about it. If you improve something by just 1% each day over a year, you'll be almost 38 times better.
Wow, that's kind of a mind-blowing way to look at it.
It is.
It really shows how these small changes, when compounded over time, can lead to these extraordinary results.
Yeah.
So what kind of 1% improvements are we talking about?
Well, in the case of British cycling, Brailsford implemented a wide range of seemingly small changes. Redesigned bike seats for better aerodynamics, lighter tires to reduce friction biofeedback sensors to monitor the rider's performance in real time.
Mm-hmm.
They even focused on things like having the mechanics wash their hands to prevent infections from spreading to the cyclists.
Wait, hand washing?
Yeah,
That seems like such a basic thing.
it's about leaving no stone unturned no matter how small.
Right.
They even considered the best pillows for optimal sleep and tested different massage gels to aid muscle recovery.
Wow, so they were looking at every single detail and finding ways to optimize it, even if the improvement seemed minuscule at the time.
Right.
And what was the result of this tiny gains philosophy?
The results speak for themselves. British cycling went from being an underdog to a dominant force in the sport, winning numerous Olympic gold medals, breaking world records, and achieving historic victories in the Tour de France.
That's incredible.
It is.
So Claire is essentially arguing that instead of focusing on setting these big, audacious goals, we should be creating systems that support these tiny 1% improvements.
Exactly. He challenges the traditional emphasis on goals. Think about it. Goals are about a specific endpoint, a desired outcome, but systems are about the process, the ongoing journey of continuous improvement.
So instead of aiming to win the game, it's about continually improving your skills and your strategies.
Yes,
So you're playing at a higher level regardless of the outcome.
precisely. And that brings us to Clear's concept of the 3 levels of change,
Okay.
a framework for understanding how lasting transformation occurs.
All right, let's unpack these 3 levels.
The first level is outcomes. These are the results we want to achieve, like losing weight, getting a promotion, or writing a book.
Okay, so outcomes are about the what. What about the how?
That's where the second level comes, in processes. Processes are the actions we take, the habits we build to achieve those outcomes. It's about focusing on the system, the daily practices that move us toward our goals.
So for someone aiming to lose weight, the outcome might be fitting into a smaller dress size.
Yeah.
But the processes would be things like tracking calories, exercising regularly, and choosing healthier food
You
options.
got it. But there's a third level that Clear emphasizes, and this is where it gets really interesting. It's the level of identity.
Identity. How does our identity tie into habit formation?
This is about the beliefs we hold about ourselves,
Yeah.
the stories we tell ourselves about who we are. Clear argues that lasting change happens when we shift our identity, when we start seeing ourselves as the type of person who embodies those desired
So
habits.
it's not just about wanting to lose weight, it's about seeing yourself as a healthy person who makes healthy choices.
Exactly. He used a great example to illustrate this point. Brian Clark, an entrepreneur, wanted to stop biting his nails. He managed to grow them out through sheer willpower. But then he did something interesting. He booked himself a manicure
A manicure? Why a manicure?
because it wasn't just about having nice nails.
Wow.
It was about shifting his self-perception.
Okay.
The manicure made his nails look good, and he started seeing himself as someone who cares about their appearance,
Okay.
someone who wouldn't bite their nails.
Oh, so it was like a symbolic act that reinforced this new identity from nail biter to someone who takes care of themselves.
Precisely. And that's why Clear says it's not just about reading a book, it's about becoming a reader. It's not just about running a marathon, it's about becoming a runner.
Right.
It's those small votes we cast each day that ultimately shape who we become.
All right, so we need to shift our identity to change our habits. But how do these habits actually form in the first place? What's
Right.
going on in our brains?
Well, Clear explains that habits are formed through a four-step neurological loop. This idea actually comes from Edward Thorndike, a psychologist who studied how cats learn to escape from puzzle boxes.
So we're not so different from those puzzle-solving cats after all.
It turns out that the same principles of reward-based learning
Okay.
apply to human behavior as well.
Okay, so walk me through this four-step loop. How does a habit actually form?
It all starts with a cue, a trigger that signals your brain to initiate a behavior.
Like seeing a notification pop up on your phone.
Exactly. That cue then leads to a craving, the motivational force behind the habit. You don't actually crave the notification itself, you crave the feeling of being connected, informed, entertained, whatever that notification represents to you.
Right, I get it. So what happens next?
Next comes the response, the actual behavior you perform, like checking your phone. And finally, the reward, the satisfaction you get from fulfilling that craving. And this loop repeats itself, strengthening the connection each time.
So the more we repeat a behavior, the more ingrained that neural pathway becomes, making it more likely we'll repeat the habit in the future.
Exactly. And that's why understanding this loop is so crucial for building good habits and breaking bad ones. It's all about manipulating the different stages of the loop to make the desired behaviors more automatic and the undesired behaviors less appealing.
This is fascinating stuff. So how do we actually use this knowledge to our advantage? What are some practical strategies we can employ?
So that's where Clear introduces his four laws of behavior change, a framework for building good habits and breaking bad ones.
Okay, I'm all ears. What are these four laws?
The first law is make it obvious. This emphasizes the importance of having clear cues that trigger the desired behavior.
So if I want to start a meditation practice, I could place my meditation cushion in a prominent spot in my living room as a visual reminder.
Exactly. It's about making those cues for good habits more salient in your environment.
Okay.
The second law is make it attractive.
Okay.
This is about associating the habit with positive experiences, making it more appealing to your brain.
So if I want to exercise more regularly, I could create a playlist of my favorite upbeat music that I only listen to while working out.
Exactly. Or you could reward yourself with a healthy, delicious smoothie after each workout.
Okay, so far so good.
All
What
right.
about the other two laws?
The third law is make it easy. This is about reducing the friction associated with the habit, making it as effortless as possible to perform.
So instead of aiming for an hour-long workout, I could start with a 10-minute routine.
Exactly. Or if you're trying to eat healthier, you could chop up vegetables and store them in convenient containers in your fridge so they're ready to grab and go.
It's about removing those obstacles that make it easier to slip back into old habits.
And finally, the fourth law is make it satisfying. This highlights the importance of immediate rewards in reinforcing the habit and making it stick.
So if I'm trying to save money, I could track my progress visually, like marking off squares on a calendar for each day I stay within my budget.
Exactly. Or you could set up a fun money account and reward yourself with a small purchase once you reach a savings milestone.
I love how practical and actionable these laws are. It's not about relying solely on willpower or motivation. It's about strategically designing our environment and our behaviors to support our desired outcomes.
Precisely. It's about working with our brains, not against them, by understanding how habits form and how we can influence that process.
All right, so we've got the four laws down. Are there any other specific strategies or tools we can use to put these laws into practice?
Absolutely. Clear dives into a variety of strategies, but
Right.
one of the most powerful is the concept of implementation intentions.
Implementation intentions. I haven't heard of that one. What's that all about?
It's a way to turn vague desires into concrete plans by pre-committing to a specific action in a specific context. It's
Okay.
basically a when-then plan for your habits.
Give me an example. How would I use an implementation intention to build a new habit?
Let's say you want to start flossing regularly.
Yeah.
Instead of simply saying, I'm going to floss more often, you'd create an implementation intention like, when I finish brushing my teeth at night, I will floss.
So it's about specifying not just the what, but also the when and the where of the habit.
Exactly. And research shows that implementation intentions are incredibly effective for sticking to goals, whether it's flossing, exercising, eating healthy, or even increasing voter turnout.
Wow, that's impressive. So by creating these pre-commitments, we're essentially taking the decision-making out of the equation.
Yes, it's about removing the need to rely on willpower or motivation in the moment, making it more likely you'll follow through with the desired behavior.
This is brilliant. I can see how powerful this technique could be for overcoming those moments of hesitation or resistance.
And it's even more effective when you combine it with another strategy. Clear calls habit stacking.
Habit stacking. Okay, now I'm really intrigued. What is that all about?
Habit stacking builds on the idea of using existing habits as cues for new ones. It's about leveraging the momentum of already established routines.
So, for example, if I have a solid habit of drinking coffee every morning, I could stack the habit of journaling for 5 minutes right after I finish my coffee.
You got it. Or if you always take a shower in the morning, you could stack the habit of doing 10 push-ups right before you hop in the shower.
It's about creating a domino effect of positive habits where one behavior seamlessly flows into the next.
Exactly. And the key is to start small and gradually build up a chain of multiple habits. One habit flows into the next, creating a seamless routine. It's about designing your environment and your behavior to support your desired habits.
And speaking of environment, Clear emphasizes the profound impact that our surroundings have on shaping our habits. It's not just about willpower, it's about setting ourselves up for success by designing an environment that supports our desired behaviors.
Absolutely. Our environment is constantly providing cues that trigger certain behaviors. He even tells a story about a retail clerk who was so used to cutting up gift cards after customers used them that she accidentally cut a customer's credit card in half.
Oh no, I can't imagine that customer was too happy about that.
It's a funny story. But it illustrates a serious point. Our habits can become so automatic that we sometimes act without thinking. But it also emphasizes how crucial it is to be mindful of the cues in our environment.
So it's not always about conscious choice, it's about the subtle influences that our surroundings have on our actions.
Exactly. We're constantly being influenced by our environment, whether we realize it or not.
So what can we do to take control and shape our environment to support our desired habits?
Clear talks about the importance of making the cues for good habits obvious
Uh-huh.
and the cues for bad habits invisible.
Okay.
If you want to eat healthier, make sure there's always fresh fruit on the counter
Right.
and keep the junk food out of sight. If you want to read more, keep a book on your bedside table.
And on the flip side, if I want to watch less TV, I could unplug the TV after each use and put the remote in a drawer, making it less convenient to just turn it on mindlessly.
Exactly. You're making the desired behaviors easier and the undesired behaviors more difficult. It's a simple but powerful principle.
Okay, so we've got make it obvious and make it invisible. What else can we do to design our environment for success?
Clear also introduces the concept of the Diderot effect, named after a French philosopher.
The Diderot effect, what's that all about?
Well, Diderot wrote an essay about how receiving a beautiful new robe as a gift
Okay.
led to a spiral of consumption. He ended up replacing his old rug, his furniture, even his artwork,
Wow.
to match the elegance of the new robe.
So one purchase led to a cascade of other purchases?
Yeah.
It's like that feeling of wanting to upgrade everything once you buy a new phone or a new car.
Exactly. The Diderot effect highlights how our possessions and surroundings can influence our desires and behaviors.
So how does this relate to habit formation?
Well, instead of letting the Diderot effect lead to unnecessary spending,
Okay.
we can use it strategically to create a positive cascade of good habits.
So if I want to start a new habit, like going for a walk every morning, I could invest in a new pair of walking shoes that I love,
Right.
making the habit more appealing and enjoyable.
Precisely. Or if you want to start cooking more at home, you can invest in some high-quality cookware or a beautiful cookbook that inspires you to get in the kitchen.
Yeah.
It's about using the Diderot effect to your advantage.
So it's about being mindful of how our environment, our possessions, and even our purchases can influence our habits both for better and for worse.
Exactly. It's about creating an environment that supports our desired behaviors and makes those behaviors more appealing and enjoyable.
This is all fascinating stuff. We've talked about the power of environment, the Diderot effect, implementation, intentions, habit stacking. It's clear that there's a science to habit formation, and it's not just about willpower or motivation.
Absolutely. It's about understanding how our brains work and leveraging that knowledge to create positive and lasting changes in our lives.
And speaking of leveraging our understanding of the brain,
Uh-huh.
Clear highlights another powerful strategy for making good habits easier and more appealing, something he calls temptation bundling.
Ah, yes, temptation bundling. This is where things get really interesting.
Temptation bundling, it sounds almost too good to be true, like having your cake and eating it too, but for habits.
It really is about understanding how to motivate yourself.
Hmm.
We've all got things we want to do and
Yeah.
things we should do. Temptation bundling links those two things together.
Okay.
Clear gives this great example of Ronan Barn, an engineering student,
Okay.
who loved watching Netflix but knew he needed to exercise more.
Okay. I'm already hooked. What did this student do?
Byrne hacked his stationary bike,
Uh-huh.
so it would only play Netflix if he was pedaling at a certain speed. Genius, right?
Yeah.
He literally bundled exercise with entertainment.
That's incredible. So he turned something he had to do into something he wanted to do.
Right.
I can see how that would make sticking to a workout routine so much easier.
Exactly. And this strategy isn't just for tech-savvy students.
Right.
Think about it. You could only listen to your favorite podcast while doing chores,
Uh-huh.
or only allow yourself that guilty pleasure TV show while folding laundry. It makes those less than thrilling tasks much more bearable.
It seems like businesses use this all the time too, right?
Yeah,
Playing upbeat music in stores, offering those tempting loyalty programs with rewards.
absolutely. They're
Yeah.
tapping into a psychological principle called Premax principle,
Okay.
which essentially says that we can use more probable behaviors, things we enjoy,
Right.
to reinforce less probable behaviors,
Yeah.
those things we might resist.
It's almost like bribing yourself with a little bit of fun.
Yeah,
And it works because it plays to our natural tendencies rather than fighting against them.
right.
Now, you might be thinking, okay, all this environment design, temptation bundling,
Yeah,
but what about the people around me?
right.
And that's a key point.
Yeah.
Clear addresses social influence.
Absolutely.
We're incredibly susceptible to the habits of those in our social circles,
Yeah.
right? The old saying, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with comes to mind.
Right.
But how does this play out specifically with habit formation?
Clear talks about 3 groups we tend to imitate. The close
Yeah.
family and friends, the many,
Okay.
the broader community we belong to,
Uh-huh.
and the powerful, those with status and prestige.
Okay.
Think about it. If all your friends are hitting the gym regularly,
Right.
you're much more likely to join in.
It makes you feel like you're part of something, like you're not doing it alone. It's almost like social pressure,
Yeah,
but in a positive way.
exactly. But the flip side is true too. A groundbreaking study tracked over 12,000 people for 32 years
Wow.
and found that if one friend became obese, the other friend's risk of obesity jumped by 57%.
Wow, that's a sobering statistic. It really highlights how our social circles can shape our habits, whether we realize it or not. So if you're trying to quit smoking, surrounding yourself with non-smokers is crucial.
Absolutely. And it's not about abandoning your friends,
Right.
but about consciously seeking out those who support your desired behaviors. It's about finding your tribe, those who are already living the way you want to live.
Okay, so we've got our environment, our social circles. But what about the biological factors?
Mhm.
What role does our brain chemistry play in all of this?
That's where dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and reward, comes in. Every time we engage in a pleasurable activity, our brain releases a little bit of dopamine, making us feel good and motivating us to repeat the behavior.
Right, so that explains why it's so easy to get hooked on social media or indulge in that extra slice of cake. The immediate dopamine rush trumps the long-term consequences.
Yeah,
But doesn't that make it even harder to break bad habits?
that's the challenge, right?
Yeah.
But there are strategies to work with our brain's reward system, not against it.
Hmm.
One technique Clear outlines is the 2-minute rule.
2-minute rule sounds simple enough. What's the idea behind it?
It's deceptively simple,
Okay.
but incredibly effective. The idea is to break down any new habit into a 2-minute version that's almost impossible to resist.
Okay.
Instead of read for an hour before bed, it's read 1 page. Instead of go for a 30-minute run, it's put on your running shoes.
So it's about lowering the barrier to entry, making the starting point so easy that you can't help but do it.
Exactly. You're tricking your brain into initiating the behavior.
Right.
And often once you've started,
Yeah.
you're more likely to continue.
It's like that feeling of, well, I've already got my running shoes on. Might as well go for a short jog. The 2-minute rule is a great way to overcome that initial inertia.
And it ties into another key principle, making the habit satisfying.
Okay.
Clear talks about how immediate rewards are crucial for reinforcing those neural pathways.
Right. It's like giving yourself a little pat on the back every time you do the desired behavior.
Yeah.
But what if the rewards of the habit aren't immediate, like saving for retirement or working towards a long-term goal?
That's where techniques like habit tracking come in.
Oh, okay.
Clear suggests using a simple calendar and marking an X on each day you perform the habit.
Hmm.
It provides a visual representation of your progress,
Right.
which can be incredibly motivating.
Right. It's like watching that chain of X's grow longer and longer,
Yeah.
and you don't want to break the streak.
Exactly, and there's a sense of accomplishment, a little dopamine hit from seeing your progress, even if the actual reward of the habit is still in the future. It's about finding ways to make the process itself rewarding.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Everything from environment design to social influence to brain chemistry. It's clear that there's a real science to habit formation.
And Clear doesn't just present the theory. He gives us actionable tools and strategies to put this knowledge into practice.
So let's dive into those strategies a bit deeper. What are some specific things we can do to build those good habits and break those bad ones? Where do we even begin?
Well, when it comes to breaking bad habits, Clear highlights the importance of making those undesirable behaviors less attractive,
Okay.
more difficult,
Uh-huh.
and less satisfying.
Okay, so let's tackle those one by one. How do we make bad habits less attractive? It's not like we can just flip a switch and suddenly dislike something we're drawn to.
You're right. It's not about denying our desires or trying to suppress our cravings. It's about reframing how we think about the habit.
Okay.
One way to do this is to highlight the negative consequences of engaging in the behavior.
So if I'm trying to quit smoking, instead of focusing on the pleasure of the nicotine hit,
Right.
I could remind myself of the long-term health risks like lung cancer or heart disease.
Exactly. Or if you're trying to cut back on sugary drinks,
Right.
you could visualize the negative impact excessive sugar consumption has on your body,
Yeah.
like weight gain, inflammation, and increased risk of diabetes.
It's about associating the bad habit with those undesirable consequences,
Yeah.
making it less appealing to your brain.
Precisely. And it's not about dwelling on the negative.
Right.
It's about creating more balanced perspective,
Yeah.
reminding yourself of the reasons why you want to break free from this habit.
Okay, so we've made the bad habit less appealing. What about making it more difficult? Any tips on that front?
This is where environmental design comes into play again. If you're trying to reduce your screen time, put your phone in another room or delete those tempting apps. If you want to eat healthier, keep those tempting snacks out of sight or make them less accessible, like storing them in a hard-to-reach cupboard.
It's about increasing the friction, making those bad habits less convenient and less automatic.
Exactly. And another strategy Clear suggests is using commitment devices.
Commitment devices, I think I've heard of those. Aren't those like pre-commitments that make it harder to back out of a desired behavior?
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
like adding an extra layer of accountability
Okay.
and making those consequences more tangible.
Give me some examples. How could I use a commitment device to break a bad habit?
If you're trying to save money, you could set up automatic transfers to a savings account each month,
Okay.
making it harder to spend that money impulsively. Or if you want to reduce your social media usage, you could ask a friend to change your password so you can't access those accounts during the week.
So it's about outsourcing your willpower, relying on external structures to keep you on track.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we don't always have the strength or motivation to resist temptation in the moment.
Right.
So we need to create systems that support our desired behaviors.
This is brilliant. I love how practical and actionable these strategies are.
And Clear doesn't just present these concepts in a theoretical vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
He shares real-life examples of people who have successfully used these techniques to transform their lives.
Okay, I'm always up for a good story. Give me an example. Tell me about someone who used these strategies to overcome a bad habit.
Clear shares a story of Brian Harris, an entrepreneur who used a habit contract
Okay.
to successfully lose weight after the birth of his son.
Oh,
He
wow.
was determined to get back in shape.
Good for him.
So he wrote up a contract with his wife and his personal trainer
Wow.
that outlined his dietary goals,
Yeah.
his workout schedule, and the consequences for not meeting his commitments.
Wait, a habit contract? That sounds intense. What kind of consequences are we talking about here?
Well, if he missed his carb and protein targets, he had to pay his trainer $100.
Oh.
If he failed to weigh himself, you had to give his wife $500 to use as she saw fit.
Oh my goodness.
And the most painful consequence of all, if he forgot to run sprints, he had to dress up for work every day and wear an Alabama hat for the rest of the quarter.
An Alabama hat. Okay, I'm missing something here. Why was the Alabama hat such a big deal?
Because Brian was a diehard Auburn fan.
Oh, okay.
Alabama was their arch rival.
Oh, okay.
So the thought of having to wear their team's hat was a powerful motivator to stick to his sprint workouts.
That's hilarious. I can see how that would be a pretty effective deterrent.
It's about finding those consequences that are meaningful to you,
Right.
those things that will actually motivate you to stay on track.
So it's not about punishment. It's about creating a system of accountability and leverage.
Exactly. And for Brian, it worked with the support of his wife and trainer as accountability partners and those creative consequences.
Yeah.
He successfully achieved his weight loss goals.
That's inspiring. It shows that even when we're dealing with these ingrained habits, change is possible with the right strategies and support systems in place.
And speaking of support systems, Clear emphasizes the power of social influence when it comes to breaking bad habits. We've already talked about the contagious nature of habits,
All right.
but it's especially important to surround yourself with people who support your desired behaviors when you're trying to break free from a negative pattern.
Right. It's like finding your tribe, those people who are already living the way you want to live.
Right.
They can provide encouragement, accountability, and even practical tips and strategies.
And it's not just about seeking support.
Uh-huh.
It's also about avoiding those social situations that trigger your bad habits.
Right.
If you're trying to quit drinking, it might be wise to avoid those bars or parties where alcohol is readily available.
It's about being mindful of your triggers and creating a social environment that supports your goals.
Exactly. And it's not about isolating yourself or cutting off all your friends. It's about being intentional and strategic about who you spend your time with and where you spend your time.
This makes so much sense. We've talked about making bad habits less attractive, more difficult, and less satisfying. And we've touched on the importance of social support and avoiding triggers. Are there any other strategies that Clear highlights for breaking those pesky bad habits?
One that stands out is the idea of making bad habits unsatisfying.
Okay.
Remember, our brains are wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain.
Right.
So if we can associate a bad habit with an unpleasant experience, we're less likely to repeat it.
Okay, I get the concept, but how do we actually make a bad habit unsatisfying?
There are a few ways to do this. One is to use a technique called habit reversal.
Okay.
This involves identifying the trigger for your bad habit
Uh-huh.
and then choosing a different, more desirable behavior to perform
Yeah.
in response to that trigger.
Give me an example. How can I use habit reversal to break a bad habit?
Let's say you have a habit of biting your nails when you're feeling stressed.
Okay, yeah.
The first step would be to become aware of the trigger, in this case, stress.
Right.
Then you choose a different behavior to engage in when you feel stressed, like taking a few deep breaths,
Okay.
going for a walk, or listening to calming music.
So instead of biting my nails, I'm redirecting that energy towards a more positive and productive behavior.
Exactly. And over time, as you consistently practice this new response, you're essentially rewiring your brain,
Uh-huh.
replacing the old habit with a new one.
That's a powerful technique. And it makes sense. If you're consistently choosing a more satisfying behavior, the old habit will eventually lose its appeal.
And another way to make a bad habit unsatisfying is to create a habit contract
Right.
in the context of Brian's weight loss journey. But it can be applied to any bad habit you're trying to break.
Right. It's about making a public commitment and setting clear consequences for not following through.
Exactly. And the key is to choose consequences that are meaningful to you.
Right.
Those things that will actually motivate you to stick to your plan.
It's like adding an extra layer of accountability and making those consequences more tangible.
And you can even involve others in this process by having them act as accountability partners.
Okay.
Tell your friends, family, or a therapist about your habit contract and ask them to help you stay on track.
It's like having a built-in support system to help you stay motivated and accountable.
Exactly. And it's not about relying on others to do the work for you.
Right.
It's about having that extra layer of support and encouragement,
Yeah.
especially during those challenging moments when you're tempted to slip back into old patterns.
This is all great information. We've covered a lot of ground in terms of making good habits easier and more appealing, and we've explored some powerful strategies for breaking free from those bad habits that no longer serve us.
Hmm.
It's clear that there's a science to habit formation, and it's not just about willpower or motivation.
Absolutely. It's about understanding how our brains work
Yeah.
and leveraging that knowledge to create positive and lasting changes in our lives.
Yeah.
And Clear doesn't just present these concepts in a dry academic way. He makes them accessible and engaging,
Hmm.
weaving together insights from psychology, neuroscience, and behavioral economics
Yeah.
with compelling stories and practical examples.
Right. It's not just a self-help book, it's a guide to understanding the underlying mechanisms of behavior change.
Right.
And he doesn't shy away from addressing the challenges and setbacks
Right.
we're likely to face along the way.
Exactly. He acknowledges that change is hard,
Right.
and there will be times when we slip up,
Yeah.
when we fall off track. But the key is to get back on track as quickly as possible.
So it's not about being perfect, it's about being persistent.
And that's where the concept of never miss twice comes in.
Okay.
If you miss a workout, don't beat yourself up about it. Just make sure you don't miss the next one. If you indulge in a sugary treat,
Okay.
don't despair. Just make sure you get back to your healthy eating plan at the next meal.
So it's about acknowledging the slip up, but not letting it derail your progress.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about getting back on track as quickly as possible and continuing to move forward. It's about remembering that consistency, even in small things, is what ultimately leads to lasting change.
I love that. It takes the pressure off of being perfect and shifts the focus to progress over perfection.
And Clear reminds us that this principle applies not only to our individual actions,
Right.
but also to our overall approach to habit formation.
Okay.
There will be times when we need to adjust our strategies, experiment with different techniques,
Mm-hmm.
and even abandon habits that are no longer serving us.
So it's not about rigidly adhering to a set plan, it's about being flexible and adaptable.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
about embracing the process of continuous improvement, of always seeking ways to optimize our habits and make them work for us.
This is so empowering. It takes the guesswork out of habit formation and gives us a framework for making those positive changes we desire.
And it's not just about achieving some grand goal. It's about the systems we create, the small habits we cultivate each day.
It's about those 1% improvements that compound over time.
Exactly. It's about falling in love with the process, with the daily practice of becoming a little bit better each day.
It's about remembering that small habits don't add up, the compound, and that consistency, even in small things, can yield extraordinary results.
Absolutely. And as James Clear says, success is the product of daily habits, not once-in-a-lifetime transformations.
Well said. We've explored a lot of valuable insights from Atomic Habits. We've talked about the power of environment, the Diderot effect, habit stacking, temptation, bundling, social influence, the role of dopamine commitment devices, the 2-minute rule, habit reversal habit, contracts the importance of consistency, and the never miss twice principle. It's been quite a journey.
And we're not done yet.
Ye-
There's still so much more to explore in the world of atomic habits.
Right, we've covered a lot of ground in terms of the mechanics of habit formation, but what about the bigger picture? How do we maintain momentum over time? How do we ensure that our habits continue to serve us even as our goals and circumstances change?
Those are great questions, and they bring us to the final stage of our deep dive, where we'll explore the importance of reflection adaptation and the evolution of our habits and even our identities.
You know, we've been diving deep into the mechanics, of building better habits
Right.
and breaking bad ones.
Uh,
But what happens when those habits that we've worked so hard to cultivate, start to lose their effectiveness? How do we know when it's time to tweak or adjust or even abandon a habit altogether? It's easy to get stuck in a routine,
Yeah.
even a good one,
Right.
without stopping to think if it's still serving us.
You've hit on a crucial point. It's easy to fall into the trap of complacency,
Yeah.
especially when a particular habit has been successful. We can become so focused on maintaining the streak
Right.
that we forget to assess whether it's still aligned with our goals and values.
So it's not enough to just set a habit in motion and let it run on autopilot.
Exactly.
Clear emphasizes the importance of reflection and review. It's like taking your habits in for a regular checkup. Are they still supporting your growth? Are they moving you closer to the person you want to become?
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Our goals and priorities can change over time, and our habits need to adapt along with them. So how do we actually go about reviewing and refining our habits?
Clear suggests scheduling regular reflection time,
Okay.
whether it's weekly, monthly, or even annually.
Okay.
Ask yourself, what's working well? What's not working? What could be improved?
Uh-huh.
Think of it as a performance review for your habits.
I like that analogy, a performance review for your habits.
Mm.
It brings a sense of objectivity and intentionality to the process.
Yeah.
Are there any examples of this kind of systematic review in action?
Clear shares a great example from the world of professional basketball.
Yeah.
Pat Riley, the legendary coach of the Los Angeles Lakers,
Oh, yeah.
implemented a system called Career Best Effort, or CBE.
Okay.
He wanted to measure not just the obvious stats like points scored.
Right.
But also those less tangible contributions, like assists, steals, deflections.
Yeah.
Those things that don't always show up on the scoreboard but make a huge difference in the game.
So he was going beyond the traditional metrics to get a more holistic view of each player's impact.
Exactly. And he'd challenge each player to improve their CBE by just 1% over the course of the season. Now, 1% might seem insignificant,
Right.
but as we've already discussed, those small gains compound over
Yeah.
time,
Right.
leading to remarkable results.
It's that philosophy of marginal gains applied to personal development.
Yeah.
It's not about striving for some massive overnight transformation. It's about those consistent incremental improvements that add up over time.
And that's what Clear advocates for in Atomic Habits. It's about the system, the process, the continuous refinement. It's about falling in love with the journey of becoming 1% better each day.
This idea of continuous improvement, does it apply just to our habits, or does Clear take it a step further?
He takes it even further by applying it to our identity.
Our identity? How do we go about continuously improving our identity? That sounds a bit abstract.
Well, it's about recognizing that our sense of self isn't fixed or static.
Right.
It's fluid and evolving. Clear cautions against becoming too attached to a rigid definition of ourselves.
So instead of saying, I'm a runner, which might become limiting if an injury prevents you from running,
Right.
you could say, I'm the type of person who enjoys pushing my physical limits and exploring new ways to stay active.
Exactly that way.
Oh.
Even if your circumstances change,
Uh-huh.
your core values and beliefs remain intact.
Yeah.
You're not defined by any one specific activity or role,
Right.
but by the underlying principles that guide your choices and behaviors.
It's about creating a flexible identity that can adapt and evolve as we do.
And this ties back to the idea of continuous improvement. We're not striving for some idealized version of ourselves that we reach and then stop. It's an ongoing process of growth, exploration, and refinement.
It's about embracing the journey, not just the destination. And that's a powerful message, especially in a world that often emphasizes quick fixes and overnight success.
Atomic Habits is a reminder that lasting change takes time and effort. It's about cultivating those small, consistent habits that compound over time and ultimately shape who we become.
Well said. We've covered so much ground in this deep dive, from the science of habit formation to practical strategies for building better habits and breaking bad ones. It's clear that James Clear has created a practical and empowering guide for anyone looking to make positive changes in their life.
It's not just another self-help book filled with empty promises. It's a system for creating lasting change, one small step at a time.
It's a reminder that we are not fixed. We're not limited by our past. We have the power to change, to grow, to become the best versions of ourselves. And it all starts with those small atomic habits.
So take some time to reflect on what you've learned. Choose one small habit you want to build or break and apply the principles we've discussed. Remember, consistency is key. It's those small daily actions that add up over time and create extraordinary results.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into atomic habits. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. And remember, small habits lead to big results.